On Friday the 13th, 2018, I went on to hop on of the new shopping site that was still in its beta test phase. This was a very new site, and I was just scrolling through the items that looked rather ordinary like every other shopping site. And then there was a small corner on the right side of the screen that said, "Do not enter." And as I saw that, I was persuaded to open it, even more than now. And as I clicked on it, another warning popped up, and this time it said, "There is no turning back from here." And I began the curious cat clicked on the tab. The more you tell me not to do, the more I will do it. I was taken into another window, and what I saw in front of me was quite alarming. There were the windows of people and children with a price attached to them. There was a list of filters that included ages, weight, physical characteristics, gender, and nationality. It was a hidden site of human traffickers, and them displaying their products that were the humans, in skimpy clothes that were almost like not having any clothes. And as I kept on clicking, I lost my senses with everything I was seeing. And then one thing led to another, and in all that pops up tabs, and everything I clicked on a 35-year-old Italian woman. And all I remember it said was, "Your order has been placed." And immediately a payment of $200 was deducted from my account. And as I did, I was a bit relieved, and was just hoping for it to be a mere virus, and it seemed to be like that. I mean, $200 for a human being is way too less anyways. I cleaned my computer and my drives from all the malware, and went back to sleep, weirded out by the bizarre incident. I woke up the morning, checked out my phone, and saw there was a message saying your order is out for delivery. Now I was just angry, and went back to the site to cancel it, but there was no pop-up this time. I tried contacting the support staff, and they refused to comment on anything and told me that it is probably a malware, and then they later blocked me from using the site. There was definitely something fishy about it. And then in the afternoon, an Italian woman who knew broken English and was wearing skimpy white bridal pieces of cloth knocked on my door, and all she had with her was a piece of newspaper. I had her sit on the couch, and most of it, all I was confused, and then I tried communicating with the woman. She seemed to be drugged a lot. After a while, I fed her, and then took her to the doctor for a checkup. Upon examining, she said she was my wife, and I couldn't do anything but agree. I didn't want to involve the police. I took her back home, and then after a day or two of recovery, I started having conversations with her. And she started telling me the story of how she was lured away because of the job in overseas, and ended up with the traffickers. And then she told me how many women, children, and men are victims of this trade. I told her that we should go to the police, but she told me that police were already involved since she had been living in my very same town for about 10 years in the captivity. And she told me about the involvement of police in the matter, since the police was the one who helped cover the docking at the ports. Now Maria was living with me, and it started becoming the new norm. And I went out for grocery shopping one day, and in the market, I saw the tattoo on a guy's hand, and I recalled I had seen it before, I just didn't know where. I went back and realized I had taken a screenshot the night the weird pop-up came to my screen. It was the same tattoo on one of the hand that was seen in the screen. For the next few days, I tried to figure it all out, and then turns out the mayor was involved, and that just rendered me powerless. Next best thing was getting involved with FBI with all the evidence. Maria now became a part of my life, and there were so many people that still needed to be free. Upon meeting and discussing everything, FBI decided to do a sting, and then later on, I had to order another one. But this time, they told me to order a boy instead of a girl to avoid being suspicious. And 2 FBI agents were always planted in my apartment where me and Maria were busy living like a normal couple. And then it happened. The boy, who was just 7 years old and from Japan, was dropped in front of my door. But the man realized that I was the same guy who also ordered Maria, and as I opened the door to let the boy enter, I saw he was pointing a gun at me. But before he could do, the agents grabbed him, and the boy was scared, grabbing me, and Maria was by my side. The whole trafficking gang was caught, and the mayor was linked and prosecuted. They put me, Maria, and the kid in protective custody, and now we live in the unknown suburban as a family. It is me, my wife Maria, and my Japanese son. A weird combination of family one would expect. Me and Maria did eventually get married. Hey guys, Thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. Back in our days, there was no shipping sites or no orders in delivering things. We had to go to the market to get the things, and if it wasn't in the market, then we just had to live without it. But we also did not have so many things to choose from. But these days, we are busy buying things we don't need. I found myself going deep into the rabbit hole of seeing things and fighting the urge to buy whatever I saw. And then working on a computer cannot be considered one of the things I am best at. So here I am, going through this site called Amazon. And then pops open an advertisement in front of my screen that says I have won something, and I clicked at it. And then it started link after link after link. It brought me to this page, which now I understood was the dark web. At that time, I had no idea what dark web is, and all it said was Amazon Dark. So there it was, all sorts of things that you would find in Amazon if it was for evil people. A whole lot of drug sections and sex products, and people ready to sell themselves for sexual favors. I was pretty keen and not to get indulged, minding that at that time, it did not seem to me as serious as I take it today. At that time, all I thought of it was that maybe it is a prank website. And so in the spirit of pranking, I ordered a mysterious box, and they asked me on the form, who do I want to give this to? And I filled in my wife. I just wanted to give her a surprise. And then it asked me if I wanted it fresh, and I said, sure. It also asked me if I wanted to see the process. I checked yes to everything, and then waited for it, having no idea that I was just spending my time on dark web. 2 days later, the box arrives, and it is a wooden treasure chest box. And I brought it in and decided to give it to my wife, who was surprised and happy by the gesture. And then as she opened it up, she screamed so loud. It had a heart in it. Something that looked like a real human heart. I saw the heart, and it seemed real to me, and along with it, a pen drive. I told her maybe it's a prank, and we sat and started watching the contents of the pen drive, and it sent a chill down our spine. It was the video of a boy being kidnapped in Europe somewhere, and then his heart being cut open from his body and shipped to us. My wife panicked and fainted, and the first thing I did was call the police. And then they were the ones who informed me that I was on the dark web where I ordered it. I had no idea, but they were nice enough to help us out through all of that. Later on, they did find out whose heart it was, and every information, and spent years on that case, until now that the culprits have been caught. I never asked the cops who he was, and all of the story, but now that the culprits have been apprehended, I want to know about the person who was behind the heart. Because somewhere, there is this lying guilt that I was responsible for the death of that young boy. Experiencing a break-in is a uniquely disturbing experience, especially if you're in the house. Not only does it rob you of your valuables, but also of your sense of safety at home. Maybe you'll never feel safe again. You're about to experience these horrors now. So get comfortable, subscribe, and let the darkness take control. This happened in the year of 1989, when I was 9 years old. I lived in a middle-class neighborhood in Forest, Virginia. It was like a Mayberry-like neighborhood. Most everyone knew each other. No crime, lots of families. Not everyone locked their doors at night. There were lots of kids my age in the neighborhood that the two on my street were my closest friends. Mitchell and Chase. The three of us were sort of a clique. Whenever a new kid moved into the neighborhood, we liked to go see him together and see what he was like and decide if he was cool or not. That year, their new family moved into a house near the end of the street. They had just one child, a boy named Parker. We invited him out a few times to play, and he seemed cool. So before long, he was almost one of the gang. Parker's mom was attractive, blonde, slim, always smiling. However, his dad was not a friendly man. He seemed annoyed by us kids, rarely spoke to us, and mostly just acknowledged us with iros and grunts. He also didn't come outside much. He worked nights, so we didn't see him often during the week, and on weekends, he was mostly banging around in his garage. One Saturday afternoon in the fall,
Mitch and Chase were both away for some reason, so I went over to Parker's house alone to see if he wanted to play. He said his parents weren't home and invited me inside. That was a really strange experience for me. At 9, my parents never left me alone. They would call a babysitter over if they were going to be gone for even an hour. I asked Parker why he was home alone and made no secret that I was weirded out about it. But he seemed totally fine with it, like it happened all the time. So that put me at ease. We watched TV for a little bit. Then abruptly, Parker got off the couch and said, "Hey, you want to see something cool?" "Sure," I said. He led me down to the basement and pointed to a tool chest against the wall. "They're in there." Parker opened the bottom cupboard door of the tool chest, revealing a huge stack of Playboys. There had to have been at least 50 to 60 issues in there. I had no idea what I was looking at. I had never seen a naked woman before. The closest I'd come was seeing the scantily clad Tanya Roberts in the movie The Beatmasters. I remember watching that movie and being vaguely intrigued by the female form of what I saw in the Playboys was sort of repulsive. I wasn't necessarily the images of the naked women that churned my stomach, but the dank and musty smell of the basement, the dim lights, the crinkled, stiff, flaky feel of the magazine pages, as if the moisture of the basement was slowly turning them to pulp. It just felt wrong and gross, and I wanted to leave. Still, I just couldn't stop looking. I'd flip through one magazine, toss it back, then flip through another one. Somehow, I had this strange notion that I was finally getting something valuable for free, so I needed to cram as much of it into my brain as I could. Finally, Parker said, "We better get out of here. My mom will be home soon. You can tear some pictures out and take them home if you want." I ripped out one of the centerfolds and stuffed it into my pocket. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't want it for any self-gratification purpose. I just had an idea that I could use it to impress Michael and Chase later. When I got home, I stuffed the balled-up centerfold in the back corner of my closet under some toys. Despite not having a big understanding of what it was pornography, I was certain that if my mom found it, I'd be in big trouble. I went to sleep like normal that evening, but I woke abruptly in the middle of the night to a rough hand shaking my shoulder. I immediately knew something was wrong, because neither of my parents would have woken me up so firmly. Plus, there was a terrible smell, a rank combination of alcohol and motor oil. I opened my eyes, and with the aid of my bedside light, recognized Parker's dad standing over me, in my house, in my room. I wanted to cry, to scream for my dad, but the mag led down at me with so much hatred, so much fury. I was paralyzed. I was certain that if I did cry out, he would twist the head clean off my neck. "You stole from me." He said this in a low voice, low enough to not wake my parents in the other room. But in the quiet of my room, the words rang clear as a bell. He called me the F word. That's what really struck me. No adult had ever used the F word on me. Combined with his tone, expression, and body language, that word just cut me to the bone. "I want it back," he said. Normally, my heart hammering, I quietly and obediently went to my closet and dug out the balled-up centerfold from beneath the pile of Ninja Turtles. I held that out to him, and he snatched it. At this point, he went on a low, whispery rant at me, including a lecture about thievery and personal property. I don't remember all of it, but it went along the lines of, "I'll tell your parents, I'll call the cops, you'll go to juvie." But he said two phrases I distinctly remember. One was, "Don't come in my house again. Don't ever step foot in my yard." And the other was something that was so strange, said with so much certainty, that it burned with my memory and still haunts me to this day. "Don't ever look at this crap again." He clenched his fist around the bald DAP centerfold. It would turn you into something you don't want to be. Then he turned and walked silently out of the room. I was so creeped out about how silent he slipped away. Our floors were carpeted, that he literally made no sound as he disappeared down the hall into the darkness, vibes, like some malicious Santa Claus. It was like he had lots of previous practice sneaking around, which I found even more disturbing. When I thought back on the incident during the following years, it was that sneaking which haunted me most of all. Even more than the lecture and the threats, how quietly and stealthily he moved, like the Grinch in the cartoon, but not with the big cartoony stride. Like I would never be saved from him, no matter where I went in life. Like any time I went to sleep, he could just appear there without a sound, and I'd never hear him coming. The aftermath of this story is a whole story in itself. I won't get into all the details, but just summarize it. No sign of forced entry or evidence of him being there was ever found by me or anyone else. I never told anyone until I got really close to a few good friends my freshman year of high school. My parents never found out about the incident. I was convinced that I would be in so much trouble if they ever found out that I just figured it was better to live in fear than face the consequences. Obviously, Parker's dad never mentioned it to either of them, but of course, he wouldn't, that trespassing creep. I'm 35 years old now and have a good relationship with them, but I still can't bring myself to tell them what happened that night. I was emotionally damaged for a while. I had fear and anxiety and shyness issues. My grades slipped badly that year. I had a hard time sleeping at night after that and was tired all the time. Because I had chronic nightmares, my parents got me some prescription sleeping aids, and I couldn't sleep in the dark again until I was at least 15 or 16. I always had to have a lamp on my bedside. I couldn't go near Parker's end of the street from then on, much less than his yard or house. If my parents drove me by the house, I would simply point my head towards the opposite direction of the street and pretend to be looking out the window. My family moved 2 years later in 1991, and I never saw Parker again after that. I asked my dad sometime later if he always locked the doors at night. Right. He says yes, most of the time, but sometimes I forget. I asked him if he made sure all the windows were locked at night, and then he said that no, sometimes our mom opened them, and he forgot to lock them back when she closed them. So that answers the question as to how he got in the house. I still get queasy when I see porn. On one hand, like any red-blooded male, images of the internet of attracted women wearing no clothes catch my eye. But when I start to stare and get in the moment, the fear of that night starts creeping back in the unanswered questions. How did he even find out I had the page? Had he gotten home, seen his magazines weren't in proper order, and grilled Parker about it? Why the hell would this guy make such a fuss and go to some extreme measures just to retrieve one turn of page of an old Playboy? Makes no sense. What did he mean by it will turn you into something you don't want to be? A trespasser? An asshole who terrorized his kids? A porn addict? Was what he did to me that night. In some weird-ass way, his twisted attempt to try to do something altruistic to me to warn me off from becoming like him. How does a guy have so much balls? Seriously, my parents were asleep one room away. My dad was a big dude, bigger than him. And my dad would have thrown that man right through a wall if you'd caught him in my room in the middle of the night. Regardless, malicious Santa Claus over a protective porn collector, terrorizer of children, and source of my nightmare and scar on my childhood. Let's not meet again.